Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our podcast. My name is Chris.
And my name is James.
And we are the Formula One Bros.
Just two twins with a love of F1 to share our thoughts about everything in the world of Formula One.
And this week, we will be ranking the 2022 driver pairings from 10th to 1st.
Yes, very exciting. We're going to give we've discussed and we've come to a conclusion on all of our top 10 of all of the driver rankings in order. So there are a couple things that we are looking at for criteria when discussing driver pairings for this season. First off, this is not how we think the teams will finish in the championship. Mm-hmm. This is purely based off of the driver pairing. We're looking at the strength of the drivers from past performances. And with the current team setup, we are not, again, I can't express this enough. We are not looking at how we think the teams will finish for next year. We're purely looking on strength of driver pairing.
And this is also not a reflection of car performance either. This is purely based on the drivers themselves.
Yep. How they have performed or how we think they will perform.
Yep.
So let's go ahead and just dive right into it. So our episode, we've got rate the driver pairing. And again, we have discussed and we've come to a conclusion. So this is the official Formula One Bros ranking of all the driver pairings. So starting off in 10th place, I don't think there's any surprise, but we have the Haas team with Nikita Mazepin and Mick Schumacher.
Yeah, I think right away, just my initial reactions is it's a relatively inconsistent pairing, particularly on the shoulders of Nikita Mazepin. Incredibly inconsistent. His place, and especially considering he was an F2 winner. He's a former F2 winner. He's quick. We know he's quick from Formula 2, but just really inconsistent. His Bahrain Grand Prix in 2021 lasted 40 seconds before he crashed out. He donned the nickname Mazepin. Though I will say towards the end of the season, he was a little bit more, he didn't spin. He didn't spin. He didn't crash.
That's an improvement. He improved.
Yeah, but still inconsistent. And then with Schumacher he established himself with a really good reputation in his rookie year. We know also, if you followed Schumacher's junior career, it takes a season and a half to really get to grips with the formula. Like in Formula 3, he won the championship on his second year. In Formula 2, he won the championship. He wasn't even a Formula 2 race winner until his second season. Mm-hmm. And it was in his second season when he won the championship. So I think he's looking forward. He's going to have a much more successful 2022 season than he did 2021. But it has to be said that in 2021, it was actually Mick that caused the most financial damage to the team when crashing cars. He crashed less often, but his crashes were bigger. And I think also just in general, having two rookies on a team in 1 year, though they will not be rookies this year, the lack of experience that they have.
Yeah. Even though they're both not going to be rookies, they still have just so little experience when you compare to, for example, teams with drivers that have been world champions before, like Alpine with Fernando Alonso and Aston Martin with Sebastian Vettel.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. So at number 9, we have the Williams pair of Alex Albon and Nicholas Latifi. Personally, and I mentioned this in our last episode, I think Albon is a good addition to Williams.
Yes,
I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical because of how poorly his 2020 season was, but he is a good addition to the team.
Yeah, this year.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say this year will be key for him.
Yes, I agree. And Nicholas Latifi is tough because it's hard to talk about Nicholas Latifi when his teammate was George Russell.
Yeah. I also think he's relatively he's not as reliable as he needs to be as a team leader. I think he's
Yes,
getting
I
there,
would
and
agree.
I think this will be what, his third season in F1, and that's definitely something. And I think he
Yes.
has improved. He
Mhm.
has improved a lot, but I think he's a long way from the reliable team leader that he needs to be
Yeah,
for that
and
team.
this is both drivers. This is their third year in F1.
Yep.
Obviously, Alex Albon started earlier than Nicholas Latifi, as he was at Toro Rosso, now Alpha Tauri, but formerly Toro Rosso, and was promoted to Red Bull in 2019. Spent 2020 at Red Bull, and now is going into his third year at Williams.
Yeah. I also think with Albon, he's had a year off from F1. And it's going to be tough for him because his performances compared to Latifi will 100% be compared to that of George Russell's. So
Absolutely,
it's
and
it's going to be tough for him.
yeah, which isn't totally fair because there's something very special about George Russell.
Yes.
Um, like, and we'll talk about that when we get to Mercedes, but everyone says George Russell is going to be a champion at some point, and I
Yeah.
totally agree.
Yeah. It's not a fair comparison, but it's one that will happen.
It's one that will ultimately happen. So let's go on to number 8. Number 8, we have the pairing of Alfa Romeo, Valtteri Bottas, and Guan Yu Zhou.
Yeah. I think this is one where it's tough because Valtteri Bottas, we know, is quick. We know is
Mhm.
going to get the most out of that car, especially in qualifying. But in his time at Mercedes, was relatively inconsistent.
Yeah,
His highs were very high, but his lows were relatively low. Crashing out of
especially
the
in 2020.
and in 2021, crashing out of the
Yeah,
Emilia Romagna Grand Prix, fighting for 10th place with a Williams, a position
yeah,
that no Mercedes should ever be in. So
yeah,
I think he obviously is quick. He obviously has his strengths, but he needs to kind of connect to a little bit more consistency. And I think also on the plus side with Bottas is being out of the shadow of Lewis Hamilton will be
yes,
amazing for him. He's already, like, his confidence has already gone up. I think he's going to be a great addition to that team, but we need to see a little bit more
yeah,
consistency from him.
yeah, and once as soon as his future, we saw it in 2021, as soon as his future was decided for this season after he signed with Alfa Romeo, his confidence was boosted
Yep,
because he knew
for
where he
sure.
was going to be. And I think getting out of the shadows of Lewis Hamilton and being his own racer and kind of leading that team, I think will be really good. Now, I think what will be holding this driver pairing back is Guan Yu Zhou is so new. He's a rookie.
Yep.
Obviously, it's going to be hard to tell how he'll be. Maybe he will surprise us and be really, really quick and be competing right up alongside Valtteri Bottas every single
Yeah.
weekend, but we just don't know. And I think
Yeah.
that's what's keeping that pairing from being higher.
Well, and I think too is, like, he is an F2 winner, but when compared to people that were previously linked to that seat, like Oscar Piastri and Teo Pourchaire, he wasn't as consistent in the championship. Now, Teo
Yes.
Pourchaire, his final championship standing doesn't show everything because in Monaco he broke his arm, and so he was out
Yes.
for most of the season. But
Hmm.
we know Teo Pourchaire is quick. Oscar Piastri is obviously quick because he won the championship in. And he Oscar Piastri actually pulled a Charles Leclerc and George Russell, where his first year in a series he won the championship.
Yeah.
The whole way up through his junior career. So I
Yep.
think there's a lot of expectation on Zhou's shoulders. He's obviously quick, but there's a lot of expectation there that is we're gonna have to see.
Yeah. Yeah. The next one, number 7, might be a little controversial because of who is in that team. But at number 7, we decided on Aston Martin with Sebastian Vettel and Lance Stroll.
Yes,
Now,
I
sorry, go
go
ahead. You
for it.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say I had Alpha Tauri in 7th, but it was
Hmm.
hard to deny. It was hard to keep them there, and we'll talk about this next, but given how dazzling Pierre Gasly is behind the wheel of the AlphaTauri.
Yes.
So we settled on Aston Martin in 7.
Yeah. And I think Sebastian Vettel has a lot of really great experience. Obviously, he was the youngest ever Formula One champion. He won 4 in a row at Red Bull. The only other drivers to win 4 in a row are now Sir Lewis Hamilton, him. At the time, it was only Juan Manuel Fangio, and Michael Schumacher. And then he was added to that list. So he's definitely got experience. But for me, what's holding this driver pairing back is honestly, Lance Stroll was pretty inconsistent last year. He was pretty inconsistent.
Yeah, I think for both of them, like we said in our previous episode, the peaks were really high for both of them, but they were too few and far between. And they both of them, I think, need to, like, Sebastian Vettel needs to find his old, like, pre-Germany 2018 levels of confidence. And Lance Stroll, I think he has proven that he deserves a spot in Formula One. He's not just a pay driver anymore.
Oh yeah,
he's not
absolutely.
He's totally not just agree. Daddy's son. But again, for both of them, I think there's a level of consistency there and a level of reliability as drivers that they still kind of need to get in touch with. And I think maybe that'll help with a more competitive car. But yeah, it's tough to place them any higher than that.
Yeah. So next, in number 6, we have the pairing at Alpha Tauri, Pierre Gasly and Yuki Tsunoda.
Yeah, and again, like I said before, Pierre Gasly is absolutely dazzling behind the wheel of the Alpha Tauri, and this ranking is not a reflection of him, but it's more a reflection of his teammate.
Yeah, and Yuki Tsunoda, he came out of the gate last year really strong, but he had
points on his debut in Bahrain.
Yeah, I think he at some points in the beginning I think he was trying a little bit too hard and put himself in situations where he put either himself or the team in jeopardy of getting points. And so he was a little bit more inconsistent than Pierre Gasly last year. But I think this upcoming season, the reason why I have him at number 6 and not number 7 is because I think Yuki Tsunoda has learned a lot. And with Yuki being so young, I think there's a lot of maturing that happened over the season, and that will continue to happen. And I think he will become a lot more consistent next year. Yeah, and I mean, Pierre Gasly was so great last year.
Yeah, he's kind of regarded as this kind of champion in waiting right now. With Yuki, there are also a couple key things that kind of are going his way right now. So he ended 2021 relatively strong. I think he's moved to Faenza, where the team is Faenza, Italy, where the team is based. So he's working with the team a lot. And I think his biggest thing that he worked on throughout the season was just seeing the bigger picture, putting together a complete weekend, not just, setting up the car to be the quickest, but like, how is the car set up, like compromise between a really good race setup and a really good qualifying setup, just looking at more of the weekend as a big whole picture and not just sessions as individual things separate from each other. So I think that has been the thing that he worked on the most. And I think you could tell towards the end of the season, you could tell that that's what he was doing. So and I think that is what edges them above Aston Martin is the growth that Yuki Tsunoda has been on, and he's expected to go on next season.
Yep. I would agree. All right. In the number 5 position, we have McLaren, Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris.
This driver pairing for me was the hardest to place.
Yeah.
When Daniel Ricciardo is on it, this driver pairing could be
top 3.
P3, P2. But, we saw Daniel Ricciardo struggle a lot in the McLaren last year. And so on days that he struggles, this driver pairing can be as low as 8 or 7, I think. And it's just because, and this is not because Daniel Ricciardo is a bad driver. It's because he drives based on feeling. He drives based on instinct. He's not really dissecting what he's doing. He's just doing what feels best for him. And he learned that from Red Bull. And this year, really, there was a fundamental flaw in the McLaren car where the center of gravity was so high that the weight transfer under braking was so drastic that you really had to be careful under braking, and you had to really be careful about the way you rolled the car into a corner.
Mm-hmm.
And Daniel Ricciardo has a very specific braking technique that made that very difficult for him. And so he had to really analyze his driving style, and he couldn't drive this season based purely on instinct. And I think that was most evident in Monaco when he finished, I think, 12th.
And he was lapped by Lando.
Yeah, he was lapped by Lando, finished 12th when Lando finished on the podium.
Yeah.
So I think compared to Lando, it's going to be tough. But if Daniel Ricciardo can get on Lando Norris's level, there's no reason that driver pairing can't be the third or second best on the grid.
Yeah, I totally
Ricciardo
agree.
is. I mean, he's a Grand Prix winner. Lando Norris is not. Lando Norris is incredibly consistent and has the pace. But I think it's really going to be how Daniel Ricciardo can get up to speed with Lando Norris. And I think that is the big question mark. And that's why I'm hesitant on placing them higher.
Yeah, me too. All right. Next, we have in the 4th place position, we have the pairing at Alpine with Fernando Alonso and Esteban Ocon. Last year, I was so impressed with this pairing. It was great to see Fernando back, and it was clear that he hadn't really lost a lot of his touch since 2018.
Yeah.
He finished on the podium, and so did Esteban. Won a race. Almost finished on the podium in another at Saudi Arabia. But Esteban Ocon is a race winner. Obviously, Fernando Alonso, 2-time world champion. As a pair, it looked like last year they worked so well together. They were a great team.
Yeah, and as we said in our last episode, I think there was a feeling from both of us that Fernando was going to come in and just wipe the floor with Esteban. But they, first, in Fernando's time out of Formula One, he did a lot of he raced in the World Endurance Championship.
Mm-hmm.
He did a lot of rallying stuff where you need to be a team player.
Yeah.
And so I think he had to do a little bit of soul searching.
Yeah.
And so I think that has made him much more of a team player. And him and Ocon, they pushed each other.
Oh, yeah.
And it wasn't just Fernando pushing Ocon. It was Ocon pushed back a little bit. There were times where Ocon was the quicker driver over a weekend and pushed Fernando. And they worked really well. The quintessential moment for them as teammates was Fernando Alonso holding up Lewis Hamilton to get P4 in the Hungarian Grand Prix.
Yeah.
That was...
Yeah.
That was the moment where I was like, that is a team.
Yep.
And they're so impressive.
That also showed that Fernando Alonso still, even in a far inferior car, like we saw in 2012 when he was racing at Ferrari, he can make some magic happen in a far inferior car compared to that that Mercedes is.
For sure.
And I think that what was really cool to see after that Hungarian race is, and this is what kind of when I realized that, okay, Fernando has changed and is like very, very team oriented now. When he ran over to Esteban and he lifted him up so that Esteban could celebrate and his outpouring of love for Esteban winning his first race, that was it. Honestly, that brought tears to my eyes. And it's always great when you see a first time Formula One winner, but that one brought tears to my eyes.
Yeah, especially being so well received by his team and especially his teammate. And then Ocon repaid the favor when Fernando ended up on the podium in Qatar.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, great pairing.
Now the top 3, this was tough.
Yeah, this was tough. Yep.
But we settled in 3rd place, the driver pairing at Red Bull Racing.
Yeah.
Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez.
I think a lot of people are going to look at that and be like, what?
Yeah.
Max just won the championship. You know, why? And this has more to do with I didn't feel comfortable putting them in the top 2 because Sergio Perez did well for Red Bull. He is the driver that Red Bull needs.
Yeah.
But his qualifying pace is just not there.
Yeah.
And
in races, he was very strong, but his qualifying, it's just over the course of a weekend, he wasn't as consistent as Max Verstappen.
And he would leave a lot of work to do in the race.
Yes. Yeah.
Like he left himself, and so by the time he cleared all of the slower drivers in front of him, Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton were already a pit stop cycle ahead of them. 30 seconds out. And, and he was bested in the number 2 driver competition by Valtteri Bottas in the championship. So like the qualifying pace, I think, is his biggest weakness right now.
Yeah.
And that has been a weakness throughout his entire career, from 2012 when he was at Sauber, 2013 when he was at McLaren, 2014 all the way at Force India, all the way up through Racing Point, and now at Red Bull. So I think that is the thing for me that has held them back from being a top 2 pairing.
Yeah. And I mean, we know Sergio Perez is quick. Even back all the way in 2012, he got several podiums with Sauber, which they didn't deserve to be anywhere near the front.
Yep.
And he was on the podium several times in 2012.
Yeah.
And such as a story with the rest of his time at Force India. So we know he's quick, but he's not as consistent as the other drivers that we have in the top 2 and against his teammate Max.
Yeah. And before we move on, I just want to say also, there are probably going to be a lot of people like, we were singing Alpine's praises. Why aren't they ranked ahead of Red Bull? And that's just because of Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen just came off the championship, and his championship campaign in 2022 or 2021 has garnered a lot of comparisons to Ayrton Senna in his aggressive, unrelenting driving style. I think that is something that you cannot deny. Not to say that Fernando Alonso or Esteban Ocon are not capable of winning races, but Max Verstappen just has that thing,
he's in a whole other league.
Yeah. He just has that thing that Lewis has, like that unquestionable, like you are a champion kind of thing that, Lewis Hamilton, Michael Schumacher, Ayrton Senna, like he just has that thing, you can't deny that.
Yep. So before we get to the top 2 on this podcast, we're big Ferrari fans.
Yes.
This is not a reflection on our bias towards Ferrari. We will talk about that, but this is not our bias towards Ferrari. But in second place, we have Mercedes with Lewis Hamilton and George Russell. Now, I will say, obviously, Lewis Hamilton, one of, if not the greatest driver in this sport.
Statistically, he is the undisputed great. Like he has beaten he has broken almost every Michael Schumacher record. Statistically, he is the greatest of all time.
Yes. And what's holding Mercedes back at number 2, and it's not a knock on George Russell, because as I said in the previous episode, in the second episode of the podcast, George Russell is a champion in waiting. There's this sparkle, this pizzazz, this thing that George Russell has.
He's going to be a world champion.
He is. It's really no longer if he's going to be a world champion, but when. So with the reason I had this not at number 1 was because he hasn't proven himself yet. And now, yes, he has raced once in Mercedes, and we know what he can do in Mercedes.
Yeah,
but
his performance in the 2020 Sakir Grand Prix was unbelievable.
Yeah, and he did very well. Granted, he got 6th place, but that wasn't to his fault. That was a mistake on the team's part.
And a tire puncture.
And a tire puncture. He ran a stunning race. But that's just one race.
Mm-hmm.
Lewis Hamilton has over 100 race wins under his belt.
Yeah. And we've done a lot, like we know also the body of work that George Russell has done at Williams is unbelievable.
Unreal.
He is one of the sole reasons why Williams is in the position that it is in. He's a studious learner. He pushes the team. He's very intelligent, but he was prone to mistakes. And he has garnered the nickname Mr. Saturday, which is great. He is Mr. Saturday. His qualifying performances are incredible, but it's
honestly magical watching him qualify.
Yes, but he could get away with having an anonymous Sunday in a Williams. He's not going to have that luxury in a Mercedes when he's expected to challenge for race wins and challenge for championships. He's not going to have the ability to just have an anonymous Sunday. And not to say that I think he will, but the pressure is going to be on, and there are a lot of question marks on that. I think personally he will be able to handle it. I mean, it's just, and it's not that like Mercedes are so far away from Ferrari. Flip a coin.
Yeah.
And it could be either one.
Yeah.
But I think when it comes to the pairing, Mercedes just barely at number 2.
Yep. And in the number 1 spot, the only team that's left, Scuderia Ferrari, Charles Leclerc, and Carlos Sainz.
Yep. I think that, it's just they're such a good pair.
Yeah, they're a great pair. And last year, I mean, they were the team that scored the most double points finishes. I think, and both of them had podiums. Charles was a couple times fighting for race win. They were hindered last year by this significant underperformance of that car, which if you look at just the stats on the paper, you're probably like, why is Charles and Carlos, Charles and Carlos, that blooper reel. Why are they number 1? But watching them race, they were right next to each other in qualifying most of the time. And then in the race, they were usually finishing 3 and 4, 5 and 6, 6 and 7. They were right next to it. They were so consistent every single weekend. Yeah, they were the most consistent driver pairing. Yeah. And I think next year, if Ferrari lives up to the hype that we've talked about in the previous episode,
if you haven't watched it, go check it out.
Yes, if you have not watched the previous episode, this won't make a whole lot of sense. If they live up to that hype, they could fight for a championship.
Yeah.
A constructors championship.
You want to hear a really interesting stat?
Please. I love stats.
So Carlos Sainz, out of any number 2 driver, was the closest on performance to his teammate over 1 lap than any other number 2 driver over the course of the entire season.
Wow.
The average gap was like a 1/10 of a second.
Wow. Sheesh. Oh my gosh.
The average gap between Sergio and Max, for example, I don't have the data in front of me, but it was like close to a 1/2 a second.
Yeah.
And also, like, Carlos has clearly established himself as a front running team. He's clearly the most adaptable person.
I was just about to say that.
Like, in every team that he's been at, he's never spent more than 2 seasons at a team, but he has been so consistent, so reliable, and so good. It doesn't take him long to bet into a team. Nope. He's incredibly popular. Like, the people at Ferrari love him. And he's so quick. He is so quick. And a lot of people were really questioning Ferrari's decision to sign him. Yeah. And I think Carlos silenced all of the doubters. Yeah. And actually he has garnered, he has made Charles Leclerc kind of get this like super overrated status, which I think is ludicrous.
Yeah.
But,
oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean, he finished ahead of Charles. His first season at Ferrari, this was Charles's third season at Ferrari. This past season was his third season at Ferrari. And Carlos, in his first season in Ferrari, he finished ahead of Charles in the championship.
Yep. I think
so. I think this is the best driver pairing on the grid.
Yeah. And I think the thing that is for Ferrari, Mercedes, Alpine, and Haas, a lot of the keys to success is going to be not crashing into each other. That is going to be key.
Yes.
You know, especially considering Matteo Binotto has said that there is no clear number one. You know, they both have equal status within the team.
Mm-hmm.
We know how well that worked out between Charles and Sebastian, i.e. not good.
And Lewis and Nico Rosberg.
Yep. So it's going to be key for them to do that. But I think both Charles and Carlos are smart enough to not let that happen.
And they have a great relationship off the track too. Like if you follow both of them on Instagram, like during off weekends, they're always playing golf with each other. They're always hanging out with each other.
It's like them and Lando and Alex are always playing golf. George sometimes too.
George joins in. Like they've got a great relationship off the track, which I think helps. Like another example, like Max and Daniel.
Yes.
When they were partners at Red Bull, and Carlos and Lando, when both of them were racing at McLaren, all of those have a great, and that can definitely help your relationship on the track.
Yep.
And they've proven themselves. Granted, they didn't get as many race wins as Lewis and Valtteri or Max and Checo, but they were the most consistent last year. They were the best driver pairing on the track last year, and that'll be the same case next year. I have a feeling it'll be the same case.
For sure. Yep. So with that is the official Formula One Bros driver pairings ranking from
if
the
only we could trademark it
season. Yeah, if only.
Maybe that'll come soon. Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. But yeah, so obviously we're looking forward to a great 2022 season. Our next episode will be everything that you need to know about the car launches. We're going to keep a close eye on all of those coming up in the coming weeks. We're really excited to see some new cars on the to go on the track. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Formula One Bros and like and subscribe to us on YouTube and follow us on Spotify. That would be super helpful. Leave a like, leave a comment, leave a rating, everything that you can do. Share this with your friends. And we will be back shortly with everything you need to know from car launch season.
Yep. It's about to get even more exciting than it already has been.
So excited.
Very, very much ready. Well, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And we'll see you next time.